A high school football coach in Washington State, Joe Kennedy, has resigned after just one game back on the field. Kennedy had waged a 7-year legal battle to pray publicly on the field after games, citing religious freedom. The U.S. Supreme Court's conservative majority sided with him last year, allowing his post game prayers. However, he decided to step down, citing personal reasons, including caring for an ailing family member out of state. Critics argued that the court shouldn't have heard the case, as Kennedy no longer lived in the district and had moved to Florida without notifying the court. Kennedy's case has ignited debate about religious liberties versus the separation of church and state in public schools. Whether his resignation will have further implications remains to be seen. The articles used in this episode are in AP News by Ed Comenda and Forbes by William Skipworth. Phoebe, what do you have to say?
I have just one word for you. Just one. Tosser. That's it. He is a tosser, and he is nothing more and nothing less than an absolute tosser. But he's not the problem here. The problem here are Alito and Thomas, who are by far the worst pieces of human detritus ever to wear a black robe in Washington, D.C. and sit in one of those 9 chairs at 1 Washington Street. It doesn't matter. It seems that they don't give a monkey's. This was not a genuine case. This was a man trying to impose some form of nonsense on us, and he succeeded. And those 2 idiots have allowed the hearing of other such nonsense, like the nonsensical case of 303 Creative, the nonsensical case of Pressure-Vix, and Masterpiece Cake Shop, all of which fly all the way through the great big legal precedent that was TWA. TWA was a case that said in the 1980s, if you're a religious person and a company says, look, please work on a Saturday, because otherwise we're going to move you to a different state, that's fine, because that's unreasonable to do. What the court has done here is it has allowed people to do the one thing that should never be allowed. And that one thing that should never be allowed is not freedom or religion, it's freedom from religion, and that is the one thing that is now dead. Freedom from religion is now dead in the United States. Jimmy, can you revive it?
I don't know that I can revive it, but I can agree that this is completely unconstitutional to allow this man to continue doing that and to set the precedent for other people to do that. So with everything that Kennedy has been through over the last 8 years and drug us all through, drug his community through, and his football team, the one thing I can agree with him with is that the best way he can advocate for constitutional freedom and religious liberty is by working from outside the school, because otherwise he's back on the school and he's forcing the school, in the school, and he's forcing the school to utilize their grounds, which requires funding and other resources to sponsor his religion, which of course is unconstitutional. But I do think that this guy really was never interested in what was right and what was wrong per se, but I think he was interested in the spotlight. This gentleman has a website where he asks for donations, where he offers his services, and where he makes politically aligned statements that go along with certain candidates, something that I'm not going to delve into. But all I can say is I see this whole charade as nothing but that. And I don't have a whole lot of faith, if you will, that this man really cared about people's rights or not. So, Cynthia, can you comment on that?
I can and I will. And I saw what you did there. I saw what you did, Jimmy, and I agree. I don't have much faith either that this person is actually really caring about being God's instrument in order to bring prayer to the young people on the football field, especially when we covered actually Mr. Kennedy a few times in the past, and when his story came up, and it was actually taken to the Supreme Court, and the conservative court actually sided with him. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote that the best of our traditions counsel mutual respect and tolerance, not censorship and suppression for religious and non-religious views alike. But one thing that brought up that mutual respect and tolerance was what Joe Kennedy was practicing, and the school that told him to pray in the locker room instead of making a grand display after games in midfield. He completely ignored that. And even the AP article mentioned that the Americans United for Separation of Church and State represented the school in the district case actually at the Supreme Court, argued that the Supreme Court should have actually dismissed this case as moot because Kennedy didn't even live in Bremerton and had failed to notify the court of his 3,000-mile move. And for the more civilized world, that's 4,800 kilometers. When he went to, of all places, Florida. Let that sink in. Regardless, he did cite that he had personal issues, and that's the reason why he left his job, that he fought for 7 years to do his way. And now, as Jimmy mentioned, he has a personal website. Oh, and I was also going to mention, Jimmy, don't forget, boyfriend has a publicist. Okay? He has a publicist.
That's somebody with plans for stardom right there.
This
fucking
is
grifter.
something very much so, and I agree with that. I agree with the grifting, and I agree with stardom. Well, and you know where he's going to actually get his. Well, yeah, I know. Breathe, girl, breathe. But you know, right? 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. But I tell you, well,
Save me with tea.
Yes, tea. Yes, will save all English people every time. But you know, with him having actually a publicist, he actually had lunch with Governor DeSantis, and DeSantis actually asked him, "Would you please, campaign stomp with me?" But he turned him down because he is loyal to 4-time indicted former President Donald Trump. Principles, people, principles. But just one thing I just wanted to point out on that we actually talked about on previous shows is that the team that he coached for over 7 years ago rather, did not have a stellar performance showing on multiple occasions. So I suppose that along with all his personal problems, he wanted to announce that he was leaving after the team actually won the first time that he was coaching again, 27-12 over the visiting Mount Douglas Secondary School, to show my God still stands and shows up for your cause just to win football, because that's why God is around, people. I don't know if you knew that God
Cynthia?
is only in existence to win football. Yes, Phoebe. Holla at
Tommy
me.
Tubville, eat your heart out.
Yeah, buddy.
God help me find my car keys this morning. I just want to say that.
It wasn't Tommy Tubville.
God also helped me find a parking space. I didn't know if you knew that. So there you go. So
God gave me Earl Grey tea.
So for Earl Grey tea, for finding parking spaces, and also finding your keys, that is what God is good for. But but nevertheless, of any of that, guys, I just really wanted to remind the audience of something. But before I do actually remind what the Bible says, because we all already know that what's important amongst any of our opinions is what the Bible says. I wanted to go ahead and just give it back to Aaron to just do a little bit more commentary, if you will, please, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to get worked up, because this case in our current Supreme Court, if anything's going to get me worked up, it's these Beep.
Tossers.
Yes.
We'll call them tossers.
I don't know what a
Tosser.
tosser is, but I hope it's really, really bad.
You can say it in Parliament, but only if you're referring to somebody who's wasteful with money, not in any other references. But a tosser, someone who's wasteful with money.
There you
So
go.
Gorsuch, in his opinion on the case, and I think somebody mentioned this as well, that the best of our traditions, counsel mutual respect and tolerance, not censorship and suppression for religious and non-religious views alike. No, the best of our traditions is a secular state, is a state free from religion. That is the best of our traditions. When you have a secular government, it gives everybody the freedom to practice their religion as they choose in private. Secular governments require freedom, and democracy require respect and tolerance. Religion is the institution that engenders authoritarianism. God, the ultimate authoritarian, do what I say or else. Censorship, all those religious nutballs that want to ban books. I don't see many secular people out there trying to ban books. Religious institutions engender suppression. They're the ones that want to enforce sexuality. They want to enforce gender expression. They want to put a limit on free speech. So if I can put it bluntly, fork the Supreme Court, fork Mitch McConnell for putting this court together, fork Clarence Thomas and his corrupt hypocrisy. That's what religion does to people. The ends justify the means. It's okay to be corrupt if it furthers the kingdom of some corrupt God. Fork God and all the religions. Phoebe.
Let's actually break down what actually happened in this case. So the Supreme Court have said, effectively, you can say a few words to yourself on some grass whilst kneeling after you've had your backside handed to you by a better football team. Think of how much time has been wasted. You've got death row cases, you've got constitutional questions, but all they've done is they have said, yeah, we'll hear the case about the man kneeling on the grass. I mean, come on. He's kneeling on the grass. And they said, look, please don't do that. And he's gone, but I want to. It's my religion. And they've gone, please do it in the locker room. Please don't do it here. Yeah, but I want to kneel on the grass. I want to kneel on the grass and shut my eyes and look like a complete prat. Total and utter moron. A wanker. A tosser. Human detritus. Absolute brain rot.
I'm sure there's no ulterior motive.
No,
praying at the 50-yard line in front of everybody. No ulterior motive there. Just wants a private, quiet prayer, I'm sure. A word with God.
The real question
it just happens to be at the 50-yard line where everybody can see and hear him.
Now, the real question is, how many downs did it take him before he realised that he was going all the way up? Did he score his touchdown? Did he do the conversion? I don't think he converted anybody, but he definitely touched down in Washington, D.C. But what I would say is that this case...
One second. I just wish that we just had a bum ching just for you right now. But continue.
But what I would say is that this is indicative of the Roberts Court. The Roberts Court takes up tripe. Genuine tripe is fed to the Roberts Court and it comes out in rubbish like Burwell v Hobby Lobby, Masterpiece Cake Shop, 303 Creative, Usvarnum, which was a case about a guy who was suing for $1. $1. He said, I want nominal damages because they said I couldn't evangelize at people on university grounds. What planet is the Roberts Court living on? What absolute nonsense. I mean, John Roberts, since 2010, has shown that he will go down in history as the worst Supreme Court justice America has ever had. Roger B. Taney, you're off the hook. Jimmy, are you putting Roger B. Taney back on the hook or replacing him with John Rogers?
Well,
John
I
Roberts.
replaced him with Chief Justice Roberts a long time ago because he couldn't even get the oath right when he signed in or swore in Barack Obama. I mean, they had to redo our presidential oath behind closed doors. So that was a no-go for me. That was a no-go. You're a Chief Justice. You need to know what the Constitution says that you're required to do.
You say that though, but thinking of big moments in American history, they got the name of O.J. Simpson wrong when they were reading out the verdicts. They said that they got his name wrong to start, so they had to do it again.
Orenthal James is tricky.
No,
I wouldn't put that on anyone.
Aronjalf.
You know,
It happens to the best of us.
I think the Gorsuch quote about mutual respect and tolerance is like a really important point, and I'm glad that everybody picked up on that because and forgive me for kind of repeating what Aaron said, but I have to concur. What about the mutual respect that the people who are not getting these things at the hand of any church, of any religion, right? They're using this idea of mutual respect to prop up their own interests and then oppress people in the same token. And so that kind of echoes with what Coach Kennedy said. No American should be forced to choose between their faith and the job they love. Well, it looks like he chose his faith over the job he loves. But what about the Americans that have no choice in the matter and are being forced to subject their children and have to sit through this constitutional violation perpetuated by the Supreme Court? Not only in the case, or in the case of the prayer in the middle of the field preceding the court verdict, but also all the cases that come after. I mean, who's really being forced into anything? Is it the religious people who always cry victimization, or is it the rest of us secular nuts who just want to enjoy ourselves without being force-fed religion? So, having said that, I just want to say I think there's also some truth to the fact that this guy, after 8 years, returned to a community that's probably sick of him. I mean, he was there probably for 1 week and decided, you know what, I'm just not in anymore. I mean, people probably shake their heads and roll their eyes when this guy comes because they just want to watch their kids play football, not be on Fox News while the Supreme Court case, kind of covers the events for the day. And I will say, lastly, while it's easy to knock the overt offenses that we know that the Supreme Court is taking, and the overt offenses that we know religious people are comfortable with against the rest of us, I do want to highlight that I hope Coach Kennedy's family member is okay. I mean, that I'm not a complete monster. I don't want to see anybody in pain or suffering. So if he really did have to step away to take care of somebody, I just want to, offer condolences and say, I hope it works out. Cynthia, what do you think?
Well, I have things to think about. I did want to just mention that, one of the things that I really believe that Mr. Kennedy is positioning himself, especially since he felt that he could do better work outside of the school that he was employed, and also, he did say that he does plan to help people understand and embrace the historical ruling at the heart of this case. And he and with that, I was thinking, since you were asking what I thought, that he was most likely positioning himself to be another face for maybe the Christian nationalism, and possibly to be even used by organizations like the National Association of Christian Lawmakers that will most likely try to capitalize on this case and do more legislation that blurs the lines between religion and government. But that was my particular thought. But I believe that, Phoebe, you did have a smidge to smudge.
Whilst we may all be going out of here wanting to, scream and stuff, don't everybody, don't. Go instead and read the case of Satanic Temple v. Sawson Valley School District, because that was a case of religious freedom that I can get behind. That was a case where Sawson Valley School District said no to the Satanic Temple. The Satanic Temple, you may think a lot of things about the Satanic Temple, but they are not a genuinely religious with a capital R group. They're a small r religious group in the same way for tax purposes a church is, and a mosque is also for tax purposes a small c church. So this group of effectively atheists calling themselves the Satanic Temple tried to get a room on school premises just like the Christian group did, just like the Jewish group did, etc. And they were told to fuck off. And they went to court. And the court told the school district, you telling them to fuck off, we're telling you to fuck off because you were wrong. They have just as much right as atheists, as those who have theism, to have school premises accessibility. It's good for the goose. It's good for the gander. Now, get me out of here. I'm an atheist.
The absolute corruption on display by the Supreme Court. It started with McDonald not seating one of President Obama's nominations, not even having a hearing on it. And then it goes on to what we found out from ProPublica, the gifts that Clarence Thomas has received over the years, unapologetic about it, unapologetic. And then to the cases they're taking, that they have no business taking. This case in particular, Coach Kennedy lived in Florida when it went to the Supreme Court, and they chose to hear it anyway, even though he assured the court that, oh no, I'm ready tomorrow to go take my job back. Yeah, you're across the country. I don't think so. The court wanted to take this case, and so they didn't care what the reasons were. They let it slide through. And you've mentioned, Phoebe, the 303 creative case, where the person that was supposedly injured by this the rules by being forced to create websites for same-sex couples never even received an actual request from a same-sex couple to make a website, had no standing whatsoever, no grounds to see their case in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court heard it anyway because they wanted to make a statement. They wanted to be activists, and they wanted to change the law. And the Supreme Court needs to change. I'm not sure what about it needs to change. If we need more judges, if we need retirement, fixed term limits, that's for people smarter than me and more lawyerly than me to decide. But something's got to be done about our Supreme Court. Cynthia?
I agree. Something definitely needs to be done about the Supreme Court. I know that there's actually talks of positioning a code of ethics for the Supreme Court. I know that Congress is actually mulling it over or trying to push something into that in particular aspect. I hope that they do. I know that our government is actually set up with our three branches, our executive branch, our legislative branch, and our judiciary branch, in order for us to provide checks and balances for one another. But, it seems like that we're having a hard time these days with the checks balancing.
There's a reason why Christian nationalists went after the Supreme Court. It's a reason that was their target, is because it's the most susceptible to corruption and least likely to be checked.
Exactly, especially when you have your judges there for life. But
now that's an unbalanced checkbook.
But ching. Exactly. But I just want to leave our listeners with something. Going back to the demonstration that Mr. Kennedy decided to do and fight for his job back for 7 years. Let's go back to the not so good book. I would like to take our listeners to Matthew 6, verse 5 in the authorized King James Version for you fundies in the audience. And when thou wast pray, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are. Nay, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the street, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. Verse 6 says, but thou, when thou wast praise, enter into thine closet, and when thou hast shut thy door to keep out the devil, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. And verse 7 concludes, but when ye pray, use not vain repetitions as the heathen do, for they think that they shall be heard for their much speaking. Be not therefore like unto them, for your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before you ask. And if you, dear listener, have an ask for more from the nonprofits, click here.